Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. Here are four big stories for today. So we're going to start with what's going on in Kursk because that's kind of the biggest story for the last 2 weeks. So Putin continues to downplay his worsening situation in Russia's Kursk. I talked about that this morning in this article in the Kyiv Post. And as I was talking about it and thinking about it, I stumbled over this. This was a sociologist. His name is Igor Eidman. Let's start here. Putin has a personal complex. He wants to be loved. Well, isn't that nice? Now, what's the point of Putin's recent outings to the people? The Russian dictator is showing unprecedented activity as he travels around Russia's regions, but he is not actually doing anything about Kursk. He's not really being tarnished by Kursk. He's not talking about it like he should be doing. This article was talking about why is he going so slow with doing what he's doing about Kursk? Because he can't be connected to that. Putin is very interested in being supported by the population, or at least the illusion of support, the sociologist said. The dictator scrupulously monitors his own popularity ratings. When there are clearly unpopular events that hurt his image, Putin needs to once again be convinced of the people's support. And that same commentary was confirmed by this other article in the Kyiv Post. So when you see things line up, generally there's some weight to them. Okay. Meanwhile, stranded Russian troops are in Kursk Oblast. The Ukrainians could top off Ukraine's POW fund to exchange POWs to get other Ukrainians back. And so that's really pretty remarkable here. A number of Russian troops are now cut off by Ukraine's target attacks on key bridges in the Kursk Oblast. They're at risk of becoming prisoners of war. It could be upwards of 2,000 to 3,000 that are cut off because the bridges are cut, and then when they set up pontoon bridges, it's very easy to see them with drones, and so they destroy pontoon bridges that go over the river, and including the personnel that are trying to set up the pontoon boats, or pontoon bridges. It's not very easy to build a pontoon crossing over the same river, a defense expert told the Kyiv Independent. Due to the river's natural shape and features, it's possible in a limited number of places. The situation for Russian forces is quite difficult there, and again, according to various estimates, it could be upwards of 2,000 to 3,000 soldiers. That's crazy that they could bag as prisoners of war, and these are conscripts rather than contract soldiers. Conscripts are like draftees whose mothers are worried about them. Contract soldiers, you kind of know what you gotten into, and so that's not making the population very happy. I think that it's very important now that Western partners allow Ukraine to use deep strike precision fires to hit Russian troops on the march. Yeah, I agree. I just don't know that it's going to happen because we have been deterring ourselves for way too long. The Russians, abandoned old people, women, sick children. It's good that the Ukrainians brought us water and bread. We're without water for a whole week, no electricity. Well, who's turning on the water supply and the electricity? The Ukrainian army is restoring water, electricity to the local population. The town of Sudzha in Kursk region of Russia has been controlled by the armed forces of Ukraine since the middle of August, which are trying to restore water and electric supply to the local population on their own and also help provide people with food, water, and medicine. Like the contrast between the way that the Russians treated Ukrainians when they came over the border and the way that Ukrainians are treating Russians when the Ukrainians went over the Russian border is just striking. However, Sudzha does not look like a destroyed or ruined town. Walking along the streets of the settlement, you can see buildings, cars, fallen trees damaged by shelling. Ukrainian servicemen ironically talk about the Lenin monument in the city center, which was knocked off its pedestal by a Russian FPV drone. I thought the Ukrainians did it, but it was apparently a Russian FPV drone. The locals are currently complaining most about the lack of communication in the town, so they have no way to contact their relatives yet. The residents of Sudzha, whom we managed to meet, say they have to live in basements now, but the Ukrainian military regularly delivers food and water to them. In addition, Ukrainian military doctors have begun receiving patients in Sudzha. What a contrast. I mean, it's just striking. Ukrainians are not Russians. Okay. Meanwhile, what Putin really wants to do is not take his best and brightest and strongest soldiers and take them to Russian incurred area. He wants to take Pokrovsk. He wants Pokrovsk very badly. Ukraine war briefing, fierce fighting on the cross front as Russia claims gains. 53 attacks on the Prigozhin front in Donetsk Oblast yesterday. They want it, and they want it badly. Greg Terry was talking about this with Zhenya today. I happened to be in the, just making comments along the way. I wasn't on the video, but yeah, I mean, that's it. They're taking their best and brightest and prosecuting Prigozhin, even though, so like what we thought was going to happen was, okay, this is commentators. This isn't the Ukrainian army. People like me thought that, oh, there's an incursion here. Surely they're going to have to move these forces, and they'll take them from around Donetsk because they have plenty of them, and we're across where that is, and they'll move them up here. That didn't happen. They're still using conscripts, not contract soldiers, conscripts that are terrible and want to surrender, and the Katarovites who ran away and that sort of thing, rather than putting really seasoned troops in place. And wow. Okay, big story number 2. Okay, today is the first anniversary of the death of several key Wagner Group leaders, including its owner Yevgeny Prigozhin and founder Dmitry Wagner Utkin, who were killed in a plane crash, almost certainly due to an explosion on board. Since then, the Wagner Group has become increasingly fragmented, with many surviving senior figures leaving the group. It went from a height of around 50,000, but that included a lot of folks that were in prison that came out, and if you serve a year, you get your freedom, but they were sent into a meat grinder. Wagner now likely maintains only around 5,000 total personnel. So, okay, that's where Wagner is. Now, exactly 1 year ago today, the former leader of Wagner PMC, Yevgeny Prigozhin, died in a plane crash. It happened just several months after he attempted to overthrow Putin with Wagner PMC units. Prigozhin's attempted coup showed that power verticals can shatter anytime there should be an opportunity and will to dismantle them. So he showed that he could be a threat to Putin, and it wasn't a good time for Putin about a little over a year ago. Okay, now, that being said, this is the big story related to that. A few days ago, Georgy Zakrevsky, another head of a private military company, effectively called on Russians to get rid of the great Putin. Here's the article in The Hill. Another Russian mercenary leader has turned against Putin. A little over a year ago, Prigozhin launched that coup, as we know. A few days ago, Georgy Zakrevsky effectively called on Russians to get rid of the great Putin. Zakrevsky is no liberal and not a good guy. He founded the mercenary outfit Paladin. The company has seen action in Congo, Lebanon, and Ecuador, and it currently protects 3 strategic objects and has over 250 mercenaries. So it's not big or anything, but that he would be willing to say that, why would he be willing to say that? Like, if Putin really had control of things, nobody would be willing to talk like that, but he's willing to say it, and that's important. For someone like Zakrevsky to criticize Putin publicly is thus no small potatoes. Zakrevsky must know that he's not the only military man who agrees. The great Putin has come close to destroying Mother Russia. Here's a quote. Our country is not just on the brink of disaster or already right next to it. Our country is already in trouble, in big trouble. Drones are flying all over central Russia, right up to Moscow and St. Petersburg. They even attacked the Kremlin. Our Black Sea fleet is being pushed out. It's being pushed out as if we were not a great power with a great fleet, but some third-rate country. Our Air Force is practically not working because it is also being pushed out. We are standing, remember, 3 Su-34s. If you didn't watch the Daily Brief this morning, 3 Su-34s at least were destroyed yesterday. We are standing in the same positions that we took more than 2 years ago, and partly in those to which we retreated. The population is dying out, becoming impoverished, drinking itself to death. No one cares. All they have time to do is bring in migrants. And this was all done by the so-called president, the great Putin. Wow, he's willing to say that? That shows that Putin doesn't have the command that he thinks he has. Okay, this is what Zakrevsky looks like, and that's where we are. Okay, third big story. There are agreements on military and technical cooperation with India. Remember, Prime Minister Modi met with Zelensky. Now, there was nothing substantial or concrete, but they talked in some generalities here. Today, Indian Prime Minister Modi visited Ukraine. This is the first such visit during the relations between India and independent Ukraine. We have talked for a long time now, both about Russia's war against Ukraine and about the need to ensure a just peace. We greatly appreciate Mr. Modi began the visit by honoring the memory of Ukrainian children whose lives were taken by Russian aggression. So that's a good look for Modi to be doing that. And remember, India is sucking up all the Russian oil that they can, getting that sweetheart deal. So he has certain interests, and some of them will connect with Zelensky's interests and some of them won't. But he's smart enough to try to find unity wherever he can find unity. The president thanked India for the support packages provided, but also stressed the importance of the Indian side remaining a supporter of international law and supporting the basic principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. India is also involved with our work in the peace formula. We are preparing other important negotiations. So what does that mean? So here's Modi visiting this, honoring the memory of children whose lives were taken by Russian aggression. Okay, and then here, Prime Minister Modi invited Ukrainian President Zelensky to visit India. Whatever Zelensky can do to get India to be less supportive of Russia is a win. I mean, it's just that simple. India is not going to weigh in with the West, with Europe and the United States. They're just not going to do that. But they can also be a thorn in the side of Putin just by not doing things. And India's big rival is China, and they're watching what China's doing. And okay, that's where we are. Fourth big story, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suspends presidential campaign and endorses Trump. I talked about this possibility yesterday, and it has come to pass. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the scion of the Democratic Kennedy family, remember his father was Robert Kennedy, the former Attorney General in the United States, and his uncle was JFK, the former president of the United States. So Kennedy said he would be removing his name from the ballot in critical swing states, but will remain on the ballot in other states, and some voters could still cast ballots for him. Kennedy said he would be giving his support to Trump following a series of conversations with him. Now, I thought initially, and I was wrong about this, but I thought initially, well, he's a Democrat. He's a lifelong Democrat. He's a Kennedy. And so if he's running this independent campaign, and remember in the United States, basically we have a two-party system and third parties just don't ever get anywhere. But basically I thought it would siphon off from the Democrats, but it was siphoning off more from the Republicans apparently than the Democrats. And so he's throwing his support behind Trump, and so that's going to be a net gain for Trump. He said, "I was surprised to discover that we are aligned on many key issues," Kennedy said, explaining that he and Trump met several times. In those meetings, he suggested that we join forces as a unity party. Okay, so that's where this is. So what's going to be the net effect of this? Probably not a lot, but it is taking some of the air out of Kamala Harris, as she just had a great week with the Democrat convention, and she's supposed to be getting a bump, and that's probably going to reduce some of the bump. It's not going to do a whole lot, though. Okay. Second to last big thing that I want to talk about here, and this is not a big story, but I just watched Operator Starsky talk about the top misconceptions about Ukraine, and this was absolutely excellent. He was doing a great job. So for example, when people say, well, Zelensky's a dictator who just wants to stay in charge forever. Well, okay, let's look at article, I think it was 16 of the Constitution, and he read it verbatim about how in a time of war, you can't actually hold elections. So you can say that the Constitution was poorly written, that maybe they shouldn't have written that into the Constitution, but they can neither change the Constitution, nor can they elect a president or members of the Verkhovna Rada during a time of war. And so that takes the argument right out, but you have to understand that. So I highly recommend it. Jake Broe's fundraiser, within about 4 days, he's at 754,884. It's incredible. He's going to hit that $1 million mark by the end of the week, maybe Sunday, I guess. That's my guess. Okay, I'll leave you with this. Ramzan Kadyrov's 16-year-old son, Adam, he shoots 2 golden machine guns at once to epic music. Why the shooting range and not near Kursk? Well, that's a good question. But he's shooting they're golden machine guns, and he's shooting double-handed. Like, who actually does that? And he's 16, and I believe he's the superintendent of the Chechen Special Forces Academy at 16. So either he's brilliant or nepotism is just absolutely terrible in Chechnya. I'll let you decide. You can make up your own mind. Put it in the comments below. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.